Alright, hello everybody, my name is Cypher and today we're going to a new Division 2 video. This isn't one of my typical videos as it's not really necessarily a build video or a gameplay video, but today is going to be more of a constructive video. Today I'll be talking about the current state of Division 2 in 2023. We are now just entering our 5th year of the game, which is truly remarkable. I'm glad that the devs have kept supporting the game through all this time, especially with how long the game has been out. And I want to stress that enough over everything. I am thankful for the devs for at least giving us content or something to overall keep the game going. But there also are some fair share of issues with the game currently right now. That's kind of what this video is made to address. I'll be going into kind of like my personal issues with the game. Things that I think that could be improved. I recommend leaving your thoughts down below on like what you think of my opinions, or maybe like what you think of like what the game could be improved, like some critical problems that are going on with the game right now. And other than that, kind of just a typical civil discussion. I'm just talking about the game really, and necessarily how I feel the game is progressing, and I feel like what could be going better, and like what the future of the game really could be. First thing I'm going to go into is the content with the game. That's going to be the first general section we're going to be talking about. So, with the Division 2 entering its 5th year of constant updates, the game has been seeing a lot of content overall. Throughout all its years, we've had multiple DLCs. We have 2 raids. We got a expansion that took us back all the way to New York with Warlords of New York. And we are set to see a new expansion, in a sense, taking us back to New York, I believe, in Year 5, Season 4, which is really nice that we're getting some kind of new expansion to the game that's giving us more content and stuff to grind through. So Year 5 is looking pretty good for the Division 2. We're getting better lore updates, all this different stuff. But with the game, how at least currently is now, there are some very pressing issues, in my opinion. One of the biggest issues is, at least in my personal opinion, the overall quality of the content. So, as most players will know, we have manhunts every single season with new targets. We have a new manhunt system this time where they are rescue missions. I am personally not a very big fan of them, and I not necessarily don't care too much about the lore of the game, as I was kind of like interested more or less with how things were introduced back in the first Division game that came out all those years ago. But if we're just going into here, we have our manhunt targets. They're released every 2 to 3 weeks, I believe, when the season comes out, and then we have our final target. So with the new manhunt system, we're getting hostage situations where you're gonna have to like basically save these key targets, and they'll give you new information and lore. The only problem is, well, it is a nice change of pace for how the missions play out. What I've noticed is that, including last season, the rewards have not been all that good. Last season, I was surprised to see that the quote-unquote reward for completing the manhunt was just a vanity slot for the chest piece. I thought it was a full-on exotic, and I thought it looked really cool. And I was like so hyped for when I completed it. Saying, "Oh, cool! We got a new exotic chest piece." It looks like it had it had an ammo belt on it, so maybe it's gonna help us with reloads. Like maybe group reloads would be a cool support piece to use, to give everyone maybe like a Bullet King-esque like talent, like when you proc certain things. It looked really interesting, but I found out that it was just a vanity piece, and a lot of people had just found out it was a vanity piece, as we didn't know. And now for this manhunt for Year 5 Season 1 Broken Wings, we have a dolphin patch. So, not necessarily the best rewards for taking up all of our time and waiting multiple weeks, months actually at this point. Like, I think it takes 2 months to overall complete the manhunt. And we're getting a dolphin patch, that's it? You know what I mean? Like, we get better value out of the, like, literal, like, poor roll drops that come out of, like, doing these missions. Like, before, 2 seasons ago, I believe it was the Doctor Home. You got an exotic for doing these manhunt missions. And I believe the one before that, or like maybe like even further than that, you got like the blue screen. You get all these cool exotics. And I'm wondering exactly what's the case? So it's like what's going on here? Why are we not getting like an exotic for completing these manhunts anymore? So what I'm thinking is maybe the dev team had to shift over the priorities because during this time Descent was being fixed and being developed. So I think that might be the case. But Descent had released with this current season, and I'll go in more into Descent later because that has its own like whole set of issues. But I'm hoping next season, now that they're no longer working on Descent as a top priority, that we'll start getting exotics again with the manhunts. But if not, there's no real reason to do the manhunts unless you're just like a collector, you want to collect all the items. But it's like, why? Like, do I really think it's worth wasting multiple hours of my time getting crappy rewards just to get a dolphin patch? Like, I don't think that's necessarily worth my time, especially with the fact that you got a vanity slot the last season, which was really disappointing as there was no clarification telling you it was a vanity item. I did it thinking we were getting an exotic, and a lot of people thought we were getting an exotic chest piece last season. So there's like, it's sort of like that miscommunication. It's not necessarily described to us. I don't know if people found out in the game files when they were data mining, finding out that it wasn't actually an exotic. But like, still, like, this is kind of ridiculous to see they were putting hours and hours and hours of our time in just for a patch that doesn't do anything. It doesn't help the player out. It's just a small cosmetic that's even worse than last season's, if we're being real here. At least the chest piece vanity slot looked cool. But now we're just getting this. So I don't see like a real reason to do the manhunt. So that's one whole key aspect that's on your tab, on your drop tab here. That's supposed to be a primary thing you're supposed to be doing that has no value or added progress to the game, unless you're a lore person. If you're a lore person, then I do suggest doing the manhunts, as it does add a lot to the game, the world building. But other than that, it's really a waste of your time. Going off next, let's go over to Descent. Let's talk about how bad Descent is, really. So, there were some changes recently made to make Descent better for solo players, but that wasn't necessarily the problem. The problem was in group play, where it was scaling too hard. The rewards for Descent, basically, if I had to sum it up, are very high risk, as you are exerting a huge amount of time, similar to like how Summit works, where there's 40 loops, and you get a very low reward. It is literally the exact opposite of the Dark Zone in that sense. Where there is literally no incentive, there are no checkpoints. So if you want, you need to reach feedback loop 40 in order to get and kill the nemesis to get the actual rewards for that week. And not only that, you don't really get anything like overall worth your time. The rewards are very bad. There is literally 0 point into doing Descent. It is literally an endless farm grind where you have to do it for several hours. And what are you getting out of this? What are you getting out of this? Horrible loot. I don't understand why. And then not only that, if you do it in groups, because this game is always fun with friends, right? If you do it in groups, it scales exponentially way harder than it should be, making it almost impossible to complete in groups of like 3 to 4. Maybe you could do it with 2 people. It's not necessarily the most difficult. It's certainly a lot more challenging, but it's like it's quite literally like impossible to do this with 3 to 4 people. And not only that, the rewards you get are awful. Why would you like spend your time going for that? There is literally no incentive, whatsoever. Descent is it's a game mode that has potential. I was very interested in Descent when they were talking about it and they were introducing it to us before it came out. The way they made it seem was like it was gonna just be like a new revamped version of like what Summit could have been, making it more interactive, more fun to play. But in reality, it's a dumber down version of Summit that's not only harder, but it's a bigger waste of your time, and there's a bigger risk because there's no checkpoints. Hopefully they do add checkpoints to listen to the community's feedback, because that's what everyone's asking for. No one's really enjoying Descent right now. And the fact that they spent like a year developing this whole entire new set of content and no one can play it really is awful. So I'm hoping to see some improvements, adding a checkpoint system, severely lowering the maybe not severely, but like certainly lowering the difficulty with the group scaling. But like obviously Descent does need a lot of changes. Going off next, if we're talking about other content, let's talk about exclusive content. For example, it'll be like raid exclusive exotics or like PvP exclusive items, right? These are items that are gated by online content. in the sense. What I mean by online content is probably like just playing with other players. So there is an out for people who don't like to do like online conflict, like conflict. Sorry, I can't speak really right now. Or the Dark Zone, and those are the named item caches. So for those PvP exclusives, or hell, you could also do countdown because sometimes countdown items do show up. Sorry, PvP items do show up in the countdown vendor. You can have a lot of fun that way. So you can go farm countdown, which I highly recommend. It's the best way to farm for all your loot. You get to pick your targeted loot, you put on a heroic, you get some pretty good rolls actually. So I do recommend farming countdown, but like necessarily, it's kind of harder for a lot of solo players who especially don't like PvP. They don't like having to create new builds to fit PvP metas, especially since like a lot of PvE builds don't work for PvP, which really does suck. It's really interesting to see that besides named item caches and potentially seeing whatever the weekly vendor reset has, like I'm just seeing the same weapons like the Night Watcher mask and the and like the relic over and over again. I'm tired of seeing these weapons. I don't know why they keep showing them to us. It's a really sad thing to see that it's really hard for solo players to overall get their like hands on new, like how do I say it, like exclusive content going into raids on top of that. So obviously you need to get the keys, and you can only get the keys for the raid boxes if you are not doing it on Discovery, which means you do have to join real players, and not a lot of people have the active communication to get 8-player teams set up. I will leave a link to GC Rock's Discord, where they do host raids every day. They're willing to teach you like what builds you need, how to do the encounters. It's really a lot of fun. I play there sometimes, so you might catch me like for a raid in there like once in a while. But it's really hard for players to get the exotics, which is why now they added them to the Dark Zone. But I highly don't recommend going into the Dark Zone. Let's see the targeted loot. Petrov, Cheska, and Chesapeake's targeted loot, right? So to get the Eagle Bear, the Bighorn, or whatever, and Bighorn's not a raid exclusive, it's a legendary exclusive, but still, and like the Ravenous, like you have to go into these raids. The Regulus, I have no problem with the Regulus being a Iron Horse exclusive. That makes sense, as it is a quest line. But like with the Ravenous and the Eagle Bear, it is hard for players to go here, and especially with content that actively works against the player, like the Dark Zone. I will go more into detail on that. But with overall content in the game, it's really hard for players to get access to some essential weapons, if we're being honest here. The Eagle Bear is a really good AR that a lot of players can benefit from. It's a very beginner-friendly AR. I enjoy it a lot, and it's a very good AR that I think everyone should have the chance to get. And I necessarily don't think going to the Dark Zone is necessarily the best way to do that, but I honestly don't mind if they do keep it as raid exclusives. I think they should just make it more accessible to other players to actually get it. Well, the Dark Zone is maybe that, but I'm not necessarily sure if it's the best way. This is like one of those tricky situations where I don't know what I could do to improve that system, really. It's just that it really does not benefit the player like all that much, at least the solo players. For me, I'm used to doing group play, going to like 4-mans in the Dark Zone and stuff like that, playing Conflict. I'm used to that, so I'm not necessarily impacted by that. But I can see for a bunch of players who are struggling to even get the Ravenous or the Eagle Bear, it can be very difficult. One more thing I want to address with content. Actually, I think we're actually good for content here. If I'm being realistic here, we're getting into expansion later on in season 4. Other than that, I think we're fine on content. The thing I was going to talk about that I thought was related to content is something a little bit different, and that is with the farming in the game. This is really like my second timestamp here. Like overall farming, loot, grinding in the game. So there are multiple systems in the game, like your shade levels, your expertise, and then your gear items, right? So the main thing I see as the common issue with the game right now is sometimes grinding is a little too excessive. The devs are actively working against the players here. For example, we've seen it with the ban waves, where people are abusing like XP farms for farming shade levels and expertise, which I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as they're not cheating, it is a thing that's input into the game by the devs. The devs' negligence to actually program the game properly and create these issues, the players should not be punished, especially when considering how rigorous and tedious the system is for grinding shade levels, especially. I see no reason why players should be getting banned for this, for farming like expertise and like grinding all this stuff, especially for like a lot of end game content with like in conflict or in the dark zone. How important expertise is, as it basically just overall overthrows the entire balance of the game because it's just necessarily that busted. And it's a system that the developers created, so they can't really blame other players for trying to catch up with the people who play the game a lot more than them. After all, this game is very tedious to grind. Whether it's getting resources to go even upgrade your expertise per weapon, even just getting like all these gear pieces to be proficient in, it does take quite a long time. One thing I want to address with this is that the devs have been recently nerfing, like they just nerfed resource convoys for I have no clue what reason. Players weren't gaining like shade levels or whatever at like super excessive rates. Even with the shade levels, I think the average is like maybe getting like 10 to 20 per hour, which is not that bad if we're being honest here, considering that you need 1,000 like shade level 1,000 minimum to keep up and be maxed out on your stats. It's kind of ridiculous that they would nerf it. I mean, they did buff public executions in like hostage situations, so those are really good in my opinion for farming. So you can do 4 directives on heroic, and you can go farm these, and you'll get like levels super fast. Territory controls are also very good in my opinion, but it's like I just don't know why they would nerf resource convoys. I mean, it was made very effective for the fact that you can complete them so quickly, but with the devs actively working against the players, because this was not an XP, this was not an exploit, this was not an exploit whatsoever. Like farming resource convoys, because they are a thing that's actively put in the game. It has a function. It is a system that is intentionally meant to work. I have no idea why there was a nerf for this, as most of the community is also confused by this. Why resource convoys had to take one for the team, but I mean, I'm not necessarily sure. At least executions, territory controls, and like hostage situations still give you quite a decent bit of XP, like almost catching up to resource convoys. If I'm being honest with you, they just take a little bit longer to farm, like maybe an extra minute or two. But overall, I think you guys will be fine with that. So I do recommend farming those. But one thing I want to like get into is the PvP aspect of the game, and this is going to continue on as a subsection of the expertise and grinding scenarios I was just talking about. So one of my biggest issues with conflict with the Dark Zone is the like plague of expertise. So what expertise is basically if you get proficient enough with a certain amount of gear or like items or even brands, right? It will add to a bar, and once you fill that bar up, you will go up in expertise level, which gives you a cap. I believe at 23, if I'm correct. I could be wrong on that. But once you reach that, every single level you get is something you can recalibrate onto your items. So for example, on I think on my gear set here, right? So let's look at my Fox's Prayer knee pads. I have expertise 3 on my knee pads. I think I'm at like expertise 5. I don't really grind my gear sets. I just like playing the game, playing the overall content. But every expertise I level up onto my knee pads, which do take a serious amount of resources as well, and it gets even more intensive the later on you go. I have 3% armor, 1% for every level of expertise on the item. So that's just for gear pieces, right? So what this means is that for just playing the game more, right? You can upgrade your armor, so you can like scale more towards some extra red cores. Because if your gear item is rolling like more armor on for you, you can make up for that, so you don't have to run the blue core as much, right? The sweet spot for most builds in this game are from 1.1 million to 1.5 million armor. For PvP, it's more of 1.3 million in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion, right? But basically, the more expertise you have, the more you can scale onto your armor here, to the point where you can run more red cores. So basically, let's say I have the same build as someone else. Let's say I'm running a Heartbreaker build or like I'm running a like an all red crit build, right? Someone with like 23 expertise compared to my 5 expertise, right, is going to have an 18% extra survivability because they'll have 18% extra armor than I do, and then they'll have 18% extra weapon damage because expertise can be rolled onto weapons. My Eagle Bear here has expertise level 5, which means I get 5% extra weapon damage, which is nice. I think expertise is a great system that benefits players that play the game more. And I think it's really good for PvE because it allows people to have more build variety so they can scale more towards some extra damage and save on survivability. Because the expertise and the armor will make up for that. But my main issue with this is that it's not balanced or catered correctly in the PvP game modes. In PvP, your damage is typically cut in half for your weapons, which allows for people who have more expertise to deal way more damage. It makes, like, once again, let's say you have a player who gets on like once or twice for the weekends, like, because they got work during the week, right? When they get on, they go into conflict or the dark zone to have some fun once in a while, like with their boys. But then they realize that they can't win a single gunfight, even though they have the exact same build as the other person. The main reason with that is that expertise is a really tedious and rigorous system that is benefiting players to an unparalleled degree. It allows for players basically, if I have the same build, let's say I have like I play a lot of FPS games. I play like I played COD competitively back during like MW 2019 and BO4, BO3, right? I was a competitive FPS player, so I typically will have better mechanical skill than a lot of other players who are playing this game, right? I do have a grasp of the mechanics as I've played this game for quite a while, several years. The big issue that I see here, though, is that even if I have the same build as someone else, because I run like a lot of popular builds, I will lose the gunfight 9 out of 10 times. Because even if I start shooting first, by the way, which is the craziest part, because they have higher expertise than me. It is literally a stat difference, and it's because they play the game more than I do. And this is I've been seeing people in my comments talk about this too, how it really doesn't make the game fun. You're basically gate locking people out of playing other content in the game, which is restricting other content for other people because they necessarily can't play it due to a quote-unquote skill gap, when it's not really a skill gap, when it's more of a time gap. Not everyone has all this time to go play the Division 2 all day. As much as I would like to do that, right? I do have like an outside life. I don't necessarily... I play the game for fun. I upload videos for fun, and I'm glad that you guys enjoy them. But an issue with the system is that people cannot have fun in certain game modes because there's unfair advantages. I do think expertise should be a PvE and like raid exclusive thing only. I think in areas like the Dark Zone and in Conflict, it should be flat out restricted or capped to a certain extent to the point where it's not so dramatic, to like maybe 5 or 10%, because then it is a little buff, right? But it's not something so drastic that it changes the tides of the entire fight. Like I cannot tell you how many times I've ever tried to record for a gameplay video for you guys, where I'll be covering a build, and you can probably check my VODs, but you'll see half the time, over half the time actually, if I'm being honest, like 70 to 80% of the time, I'm dying to players who are like having 23 or 20 expertise. I can't necessarily beat those players, not because I'm because I'm bad at the game. I'm a pretty experienced PvP player at the game. The issue is that their stats are just so much higher than mine, and it's because they have more time to allocate towards the game. Where these are players that have like shade level 5,000 and all this crap, and it's really an unfair advantage. Once again, I do think it should be limited to PvE exclusive experiences, like I said, the open world and raids, so that way you're still your grind isn't being offset. But what I've noticed is queue times for Conflict have drastically gone up. Because no one's playing the mode. It's just the PvP tryhards, which does kind of suck because then you can't really have a lot of fun. You have to sweat your balls off to the point where it's basically just like playing any other COD game with skill-based matchmaking, which obviously is not a very fun experience for the player. Along with that, it's the cheater situation with Conflict in the Dark Zone. I cannot tell you how many times I've been hit by people all the way across the map through walls. And it's a very rampant issue more in the Dark Zone than it is in Conflict. In Conflict, it's more of just an issue with expertise, but in the Dark Zone, it's a mix of both, which is making it for players who try to get the Eagle Bear, the Bighorn, or the Ravenous. It makes it necessarily impossible for them to actually complete that and get that content solo. I don't recommend going into the Dark Zone, as the drop rates for those exotics are like low enough as is, even with targeted loot. If you get like a targeted AR or rifle loot, it's bad enough as is that I couldn't recommend going into the Dark Zone. Once again, I do have GC Rock's Discord linked in the description below, so go in there and drop by, and the people there are so nice. They will help you out all the bunch, for whether it's PC, Xbox, PlayStation. They got people for every single ring of the crop, and they will help you guys out, no problem. Just please do yourself a favor, don't bother with the Dark Zone. The expertise doesn't help, the sweaty tryhards don't help, and the cheaters definitely don't help either. So it'll be really hard to even get that exotic, let alone extract with it. So that's just all I really have to say for the PvP aspect of the game. One last issue I would like to address is the developers, the dev team. So I do like the recent, at least within the past like several months, the communication we've been getting with the development team. They've been very open about like what they're trying to do, what their intentions are, and I really do appreciate that. When if you want to see like where this is happening, it's really all on Twitter. I'm not calling it X. I don't care. On Twitter, there's like people like Morten Ryberg, like other Division 2 dev teams, where they'll be like honest about the downtimes and all this stuff. So they've been a lot more transparent with us, which I really do appreciate, as they are trying to do good by us with the community. But there are some issues that, like especially balancing issues, that things aren't being taken into account. Like I said, with expertise, this has been a thing that's plaguing the game for years, and it's not necessarily getting any better. They've essentially killed off 2 entire game modes, which are huge content, that are just being unplayable essentially for all the other players in the game that are like newer, that don't have as much time to play. And along with that, what's it called? The way they are working against the community, as we've seen within the past couple of months, the ban waves. So once again, nerfing XP farms because they are quote unquote not intentional but are in the game is debilitating to the players. People are trying to play the game and have fun like everyone else. And when you have unfair systems like expertise and the shade tier system, where you can't have maxed out stats and you lose all your gunfights, not based on skill, but based on time you have available to play the game, obviously everyone's going to want to have a piece of that pie. They're going to take a slice of that cake and eat it too. Which is the whole reason why people were using those expert, like not those expertise glitches, those XP glitches. One of the big ones I remember seeing was the countdown one. I forgot who the it was for the manhunt thing. I forgot, was it the Lewis manhunt? I think it was the one with the Dr. Home, where people would just get their oxidizer chem launchers and they would shoot the doors for everything that was spawning, just farming XP. It was really effective, if I'm being honest with you. They were getting like 60 shade levels in like an hour, so it was like triple what the normal rate was. And like I think a friend of mine got to like, what was it? If I'm correct, I think he got to like shade level 1,000 in like a day or two, and I think he was at like 300 or 200 beforehand. So like he was just there for a while, and he just kept running the Anderson mission over and over again. So I mean, more power to him. He didn't get banned, surprisingly or not. I hope that doesn't change things for him, but I think he got like a 2-week ban because he did it in one day. So it was just like they treated it as like a one-time offense. But they did reset him back. So I mean, he's at like 500, 600 now, like normally. So good for him. But obviously, as you can see, the dev team shouldn't be working against players, especially nerfing the already like fairly legal methods of farming XP, like the resource convoys. One of them I saw where they treated it as a facade, where they said, oh, there's actually, like, while they nerfed like all these other previous XP routes, they said it was overall improving the amount of XP gain because they buffed it to the blockades for like the settlements, which only appear once a week, might I add, right? And they're not even mandatory. And even then they don't give you that much. They give you like maybe like a little bit more than the public execution. I think they give you like maybe like a million XP or whatever. But like that's without directives. So you can get like one level out of that for a whole week. Like, I'm sorry, that's not a buff. It's still a nerf. It's still a nerf overall. So, the dev team needs to stop trying to disable and cripple the player base and try to enable them. Especially when we have game modes like Descent, where we want to farm Descent, right? We want to have new content and enjoy new content in the game. But if we can't enjoy that content, what's the point? There's no point in playing content that has high risk, low reward, right? There's no point in going to the Dark Zone or Conflict with all the cheaters and expertise, right? Which makes it unfair, like to other players, newer players trying to get into other content, and they're already nerfing our our XP routes. So the dev team is actively working against us, trying to nerf us back down because they realize that players who do have more time to play the game, are finding all these different routes and stuff, and they're spreading them to other people. Because once again, people in the division, we're essentially working together as a community here, right? Because we're realizing that the dev team isn't necessarily doing what's best in the interest of the players. They're consumers, and once that's happening, people are gonna start leaving the game. And I don't want people leaving the game because I love this game, right? I've been playing this game for years. I've been playing the first division ever since it came out, and I want this game to keep thriving. We're not really going to be seeing a Division 3 anytime soon, as like they're already working on Star Wars Outlaws, and I think they were also working on some Avatar game. So we're not going to see the Division 3 until quite a while. I think there was a leak date for when it was planned to come out, and that was in like 2027, dude. We're not even 2024 yet, okay? So like we still got some time in this game, and hopefully year 5 won't be the end of the support we're in for the Division game. Like, I know I do seem harsh with my criticisms for this game, but I'm saying that because I love the game. I have so much fun playing this game, whether it's with friends or just grinding on my own. I love the Dark Zone. I love the idea of the Dark Zone. I love Conflict. It's so much fun having fun with all these different builds, and I learn from seeing other players what works and what doesn't. And that's just kind of like what I enjoy about the game. And you know, people here, like if you're watching this video or you're watching my other build videos, you're watching these videos because you guys enjoy the game too, and you want to get better at the game and you want to enjoy the game. So I know I might seem like I'm being an ass here, but I'm not trying to be. Other than that, I really kind of like want to just wrap things up here, saying like once again, I do love the game like a lot, and I don't necessarily how do I say this? I don't want to see the game go down a route that I've seen many other games go down, where like the player base is just declining and dwindling because of changes made by like developers that aren't necessarily good for the player. So if you agree with what I said, leave a like on the video. If you didn't, leave a dislike. Comment down your thoughts below, whether you agree with me or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts about like how you feel about the game and what you think could be improved. I really do enjoy the game a lot. And other than that, I think that there is a bright future for this game. I think we'll start getting these manhunts back on track next season, maybe with an exotic, since they're not working on Descent as much anymore. And I think we're going to start getting all this other new content, and I think it's going to be great. So I think the game does have a bright future ahead of it, especially with Year 5 Season 4. I can't wait to get that new expansion to New York. And I'm waiting with just the rest of y'all. So if you enjoyed this video, once again, leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and I will see you all in the next one. I will have a new video coming out 3 days after this one, going over a spotter pulse build, and I know y'all are gonna love it. So I will see you all in the next one. Later.